Hi, all. Welcome back to another edition of Collector's Market Watch, where we talk about all things Lorcana from a collector's perspective. That means enchanteds, sealed product, and promo cards. And in today's episode, we're going to do a deep dive on each individual top chase card in Lorcana from each retail set in reverse chronological order from Reign of Jafar all the way down to first chapter. Talk about each card in detail and see if maybe it's a card you want to consider chasing down, buying outright, everything in between, show you some market trends along the way. But y'all, before we get into that, it would mean a lot to us if you would consider scrolling down and hitting that subscribe button. We do Market Watch content on the channel every Tuesday and pack opening content on the channel every Sunday and Thursday. Also, make sure to join the Discord. Link is down in the description for that. And now with all that being said, let's get into today's episode. And right even before we get into the episode, I want to make a preface, make a call out before I forget to do it. When we talk about buying versus chasing a card down, I'm sure some of you are thinking to yourselves, obviously it makes a lot of sense to just go and buy the card outright, and you would be absolutely right. When we talk about chasing a card down, at least in terms of this specific episode, really what we're looking to figure out is now a good time to buy this card, or maybe a time to wait, let the market settle, and maybe rip a few packs along the way and just have some fun and see if you can pull the card. Just know whether it's Lorcana as a TCG or really any TCG in general, more times than not, almost every time, you're going to be better off just buying the card. Like if you want a specific chase card or a card that you consider to be your chase, right? I might show you some cards today that you might say, well, that's not my chase within the set. Totally understand that. If you want a card and you say to yourself, like, should I go and buy this card or should I go rip packs for this card? Like I said, almost every single time, just go buy the card, get yourself a win. But what we will dive into today is talking about these chase cards and saying to ourselves, okay, is this a time where we might want to consider executing that buy? Or should we maybe give the market a little bit of time to breathe based off of different headwinds within the market? So with all that being said, let's get into the market. And of course, starting with Reign of Jafar, we're going to start with Elsa Into the Unknown. Again, just to get our bearings here as we go down and look at specific data that we want to be able to track. It's looking like average market price right now going around 262. And of course, we see this card absolutely roasting in price. And it looks like when we talk about lowest verified listing coming in around 260, so very similar. It looks like the card has started to very much bake out in the market. Really, like with each one of these cards, what I will attempt to do is kind of give my call of like, what would I do in this situation? And then from there kind of unpack that theory a little bit. This one to me is very much, if you want to pull the trigger on this card, go ahead and do it. We really are using Reign of Jafar and using Into the Unknown right now as a fascinating use case to pull on maybe the most sturdy thread from a collector's perspective in Lorcana, which is the Elsa thread, the Elsa premium, the Elsa tax. When we think about Elsa from a collector's perspective in Lorcana, it is a card that has absolutely stood the test of time in multiple different instances. One of them maybe we'll talk about a little bit later on in the episode, which would be Elsa Spirit of Winter. But also when we talk about even other Elsas like Elsa Spirit Queen from the original D23 first edition promo cards, which is a card that we probably won't dive into today, of course, because those are promo cards and we're keeping it more to retail in this episode. When we talk about this Spirit Queen Elsa from the Disney D23 first edition promos, I mean, that card is rocking in PSA 10 like a $7,000 price tag right now, whereas its counterparts, I'm thinking about like Maleficent Monstrous Dragon, Stitch Rockstar, right? Those might be more so in the $2,000 to $3,000 range, and then even as you go lower, talk about Captain Hook, Robin Hood, Cinderella, those are even lower than that. So what is driving that delta between Stitch, Maleficent, and then Elsa Spirit Queen all the way up at the top, if they're all the same exact card and all, a part of the same box or the same content that you can actually buy, right? Really, it just comes down to that's what the market has decided, and it's a collectible card. And so going into the unknown, we have very similar threads that we can pull on from a collector's perspective. So really quickly, and again, I very rarely do this when we do Collector's Market Watch, but I do want to quickly pop in to the actual super rare version of Into the Unknown and just show you some of the stark contrasts here. So again, just from a contrast perspective, I mean, this card's $1 right now, right? Not to say it's not a playable card within that Amethyst Sapphire combination, but again, when we talk about whether it's the Enchanted or we talk about the super rare, both of them, I mean, it's the same exact card, right? The card is ink locked into that combination, so not much in the way of flexibility, and also, once again, you don't see it played in every single Blurple deck, some but not all, right? Card is playable, but not necessarily an absolute staple in the combo, right? Also, looking from just a pure data perspective, when we go down and look at the numbers from a rolling 3-month, once again, we see just an absolute complete opposite trend when we talk about the super rare, into the unknown rocking just an absolute downward spiral from a price perspective. Once again, going back into the enchanted, and we see the absolute opposite direction, right? Those are the different types of trends that we can try to identify to say to ourselves, is the card collectible? Are there a lot of eyeballs on the card? And this is one that I do see it continuing to hold that weight for a very long time. I mean, we're going to talk about things like rotation and things of that nature, going forward here with some other cards. But with this one, it really just kind of comes down to, do you believe in the Elsa Premium? And as a collector, do you think that will hold weight long term? I'm personally someone who I believe that it will. And so for me, I kind of look at this card like, you're not going to ever tell me that it's a bad time to pick up the card. I mean, honestly, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months from now, probably be talking about this card slowly trickling up in price. And there's some other Elsa threads that we can pull on that would kind of give us those parallels that might lead us to believe that might happen with Into the Unknown. But we'll probably save that for a few sets down the road here in this episode. But yeah, like I said, Into the Unknown, super collectible. It's one where it's like, look, if you want to be able to build out that Reign of Jafar set, go for it. But at the same time, it really comes down to if you do believe in the Elsa tax. Moving on to the next card, which is going to be Tamatoa Happy as a Clan. We've talked about this card in pretty great detail, but just to kind of set the scene for this card, looks like average price here coming in average market price at $287, and then average retail price, lowest verified listing, I should say, for retail is going to come in at $274. So once again, pretty much trending directly in line, and the card has slowly dipped down in price. Honestly, with Tamatoa, when we talk about buy, sell, hold, chase, all of these different things, Tamatoa really just kind of comes down to your timeline. Honestly, like, this card is an astronomically high dollar amount card that to tell you the truth, I really just, to me, I feel like we aren't going to see significant headwinds with this card until it's out of rotation, which is going to be, what, 1.5 years from now? Something like that. Once Arcasia's Island falls out of rotation, that's when you're going to see that first significant headwind. However, when you do think about the card as a whole, relative to other cards like Disney princesses, etc., looking at the Tamatoa, if you just do an exercise, and you can do this with any single enchanted rare, if you just wipe the text from the card, and it's just a card, right? It's just a very difficult to pull card with no text on it, right? How will that card hold up from a collectability perspective versus, say, Aurora or Belle, right? Different cards like that. And don't get me wrong, this card will definitely run in folklore for years to come as like, man, do you remember when Sapphire just was so meta warping and Tamatoa was just right at the heart of it? Everyone was running 4 of them, etc. Like, absolutely, that will have its place, but the market probably isn't going to fully digest that and fully, like, believe in that, especially 2, 3, 4 years from now. Again, you might see spikes in price when they start to do things like, have Arcasia's Island go out of print and things like that. But like, we're still working towards having first chapter be out of print and Rise of the Floodborn and some of the early on Infinity format, sets being out of print. We have a ways to go before Arcasia's Island goes out of print or anything like that. So you definitely will see headwinds drive this card down before you see more tailwinds. If you're willing to wait for something like that where you might see that dip in price, fantastic. If not, honestly, the card is probably going to stabilize somewhere around this range. It might continue to trickle a little bit lower, but really it just comes down to your timeline if you're looking to be able to clip off that like high-end enchanted from Arcasia's Island, if you're looking to complete that enchanted master set or master set in general. Again, I don't think you're going to see too much in the way of like crazy dips, crazy spikes, anything like that. It's a really strong card, and as long as Sapphire continues to be an ink that's used in the meta, which I do believe that they do a pretty good job having it be pretty wide amongst the inks, I think you're going to see this card continue to be played in Lorcana. And so honestly, I continue to see it probably hold that weight above 200, maybe even over 250. Like I said, until you see Arcasia's Island exit the meta and rotation. So going into Azure at Sea, and you came back, and y'all, I've talked about Azure at Sea ad nauseum now. But let's and at least what my thoughts are on it. But this is absolutely shocking when we look at Azure at Sea and coming in with average market price coming in at 91. Obviously, card is just completely dipping in price. But even with an average market price, like lowest verified, you can get this card for $73 right now. Okay. I am pretty sure, just for a comparison, right now, I believe there are 13 or 14 Reign of Jafar enchanteds that are outpacing this card, the number one enchanted, the number one in pull from this set. Conversely, you also think about Azure at Sea and you say to yourself, well, Azure at Sea, how come it's so, how come it's, still kind of holding its weight in price? I mean, versus something like Into the Inklands, which those boxes are going for dirt cheap right now. And it is because there are still very much meta warping cards in the set. When you talk about, like, I'm pretty sure Maui Half Shark from a legendary rare perspective, cold foil, that might be the most expensive legendary rare in Lorcana. It might be kind of jockeying for position with Tamatoa Happy as a clam from the legendary rare perspective. If they had a Maui Half Shark enchanted rare, I do realize they probably didn't think that that made much sense at the time. But I'll tell you what, if they made a Maui Shark enchanted rare, we'd probably be talking about very similar things as we're talking about like Tamatoa, right? And like how expensive that card is. Obviously, Lorcana, starting out with that healthy gameplay base and having it be much more like drastic from a game player to collector ratio perspective. Obviously, the cards that are meta, that define the meta are going to be cards that are just more expensive, especially when you add on top that they would be hard to pull cards that, are meta defining. Obviously people want to be able to bling out their decks, etc. But with You Came Back and just really with Azure at Sea in general, it's a buy. It's like an absolute, like, if it's me, it's total green light right now. If you are someone out there right now and you're saying to yourself, I would love to complete a master set of something, especially an enchanted set of something. Like, I'm very much someone where, like, I'm looking to fill out my enchanted sets, right? And be able to say that I've completed those. If I was someone who wanted to go as wide as possible and be able to really, finish out a set and be able to take X amount of dollars and say to myself, like, I really want to be able to get the most bang for my buck, Azure at Sea is going to be the absolute place where we are going to do that. Again, You Came Back, like, looking at these cards, like, going through here, let's see if we can just, like, go through here and see, like, I mean, you've got really only 5 cards that are outpacing Maui Shark Cold Foil. And honestly, the Raya, it's probably close. The last that I saw, Maui Shark Cold Foil is going for like somewhere in that $50 price point. It's only a handful of cards in the entire, handful of enchantments in the entire set that outpace that, right? So if you really want to get like a very solid bang for buck, again, you look at Maui Shark here at $46, but again, that's probably taking into account the normal and not the actual cold foil. Yeah, absolutely. We see right here, that's the normal right there. But if you went in and adjusted cold foil, it's going to be up in the 50s, and that card's going to be jockeying for position somewhere up here. So once again, if you're somebody from the perspective of saying, like, I'd like to spend X amount of dollars and go very wide and have a lot of cards to show for it, this is the set. So, like, Azure at Sea for me equals green light. Like, in any sense of the word. The only thing I would say is, once again, like, of course, like, playability, Maui Shark, and a couple other cards in the set. Yes, I get it. They will go down eventually. Like, there will probably come a time, and I know it sounds crazy to think, but, like, there will probably come a time a couple years from now where Maui Shark is, like, not worth much money at all, right? Because at the end of the day, really it's the tack and the multiple. I think there's 3 different traits, that 3 different pieces of tack on that card. It's just a very diverse Swiss Army knife of a card, right? So, like, but eventually you're only going to be able to play that card in infinity format, right? So eventually that card will go way down in price. So if you want to be able to kind of clip that card, ways from now, you certainly can. But once again, Azure at Sea, absolutely. Like, if you want to be able to go for that, go for it. I would say total green light on that. Moving on into Shimmering Skies, and of course, my favorite card in all of Lorcana from an artwork perspective, Mufasa. Just an absolutely beautiful card, and there are multiple call-outs to say that this card is absolutely collectible. Going through here, we see it looks like retail right now, market price, we have $226, and then even a little bit lower than that, it's looking like you can get this card if you want to for kind of in the 2 teens right now, which is, which I think is very fair for this card. But actually going back here and looking down at from a price perspective, you do see that, it's starting to very much flatline, but at the same time, like, there's been a gradual decline slowly but surely with this card, but we are starting to see it level out a little bit, kind of trying to fight off that $200 resistance. And I do think that is because everyone really truly does see this card from a collectability perspective, similar to like an Into the Unknown or an Elsa Spirit of Winter or a Cinderella Ballroom Sensation, like these different cards where it's like, I wouldn't say there's like, it's overly played, but at the same time, it's just been deemed as the card that if you pull this card, you have pulled the chase card within the specific set. I do think that's going to help keep that like over $200 sort of resistance, and it's going to be really interesting to see the enchanteds that I'm calling pre-iconics. So like thinking about like when Fable does drop and we start talking about the Mickey and the Minnie iconic rare, these are now the max rarity from a retail perspective. However, thinking back, right, like no different than if you think about like Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, we'll use Pokemon as an example. Like when you think about like first edition, like base set, or even just unlimited base set, you think about like the big three, like Charizard, Blastoise, Venusaur, right? And they have like the holo foiling behind them, like the Chansey, etc. Like you're thinking to yourself like, wow, unbelievable. Like that's an amazing pull. But nowadays, right, in the more contemporary sets, you say to yourself, like, if you pull something that's just a holo foil within the picture box, you're saying, I didn't really hit anything there, right? You're looking for full arts, you're looking for VMAXs and EXs and SIRs and all of these different things, right? So there's an evolution of what is that, like, max rarity that you're chasing. The market and the hobby will identify that and understand that. And looking at enchanted rares pre-iconic, like pre-fabled, right? Looking at these first 8 sets, pulling an enchanted rare will mean more because you are pulling max rarity. It's yet to be understood like what they'll do with the enchanteds as iconics and as epic rares come into the fold. But I do think it's safe to say that they very well could shift around the pull rates and the ratios of the enchanted rares. And once again, that will affect the first 8 cards. And a card like Mufasa, which has absolutely been deemed a very collectible card for, it could be a numerous amount of reasons. Again, we could see this card continue to go up in price. But what I will say is this card has seemed to really fight off, really fight off headwinds where it's kind of like, look, I understand that the card is somewhat playable, but going into Shimmering Skies and looking at it from a price perspective, I mean, you look at Mufasa relative to the next highest card, which right now is going to be Robin Hood Sharpshooter. You're talking about an over $100 difference. From there, you look at Mufasa versus 2 of the most playable cards in Shimmering Skies. You look at Prince Naveen, Ukulele Player, coming in around $83. And then you look at Clarabelle Light on Her Hooves coming in underneath $80 at $78. Once again, they're not going to be in rotation long, but they are going to be a part of this post format, this rotation format. You're still going to be able to play these cards. Mufasa's outpacing these cards by $140, $150. Like, I mean, and like, look, again, with Mufasa, I understand. I'm not in any way saying that it's not playable within Sapphire. It certainly is, right? Like, the Legendary still goes for a few bucks. But again, compared to what's keeping that price sort of bolstered for Naveen and Clarabelle, I mean, this card is drastically outpacing, and the tack on it is, it's not as good. I mean, at least not defined by current game playing standards today. Right, so it could be a multitude of things. It could be the artwork. To be fair, I think Shimmering Skies low-key might be like some of the best artworks in Lorcana. I think that the moment that Shimmering Skies dropped, like I was like, man, they are really dialing in the artwork from these sets, like truly, just absolutely phenomenal. But anyway, that's certainly part of it. The other could absolutely be because of the late great James Earl Jones playing the role of Mufasa, passing away, and that could have something to do with it. It really could. Like, again, there's some things with collectability that are just intangible data points that we're never going to really know. But all we can go off of is the market price and the data that we can see right in front of us. And here I see that this card is almost triple the price of Naveen and about triple the price of Clarabelle. So, really, phenomenal collectible card. I would say once again, similar to the Into the Unknown perspective, like, if you want to wait on it, you can. I mean, there might be a little bit of a trickle-down effect. I do think that, when you talk about like rotation, coming out of rotation, things like that, I think you're going to see more of a drop with cards like Naveen and cards like Clarabelle and things like that. I don't know that you're going to see it like a massive, like falling off of a cliff with Mufasa because of everything that we just described. So really with Mufasa, I kind of put it in that mid-tier, like with Into the Unknown. If it's something that you're itching to get, I don't think you're missing out on any type of like crazy dip or anything like that. So if you want to be able to go for it, absolutely by all means go for it. But, yep, one of my favorite cards. Love it. I don't know that anything's going to come in and touch that card for a long time. It's phenomenal. But moving into Ursula's Return, obviously number 1 card here is going to be Ariel Sonic Warrior. Might have talked about this card last week on the channel. Honestly, I forget. The Market Watch apps blur together a little bit. We go through so many things. All of it's super fun, but I feel like we talked about this card maybe last week. But anyway, we're going to go over it again and talk about it from a different light. Anyway, coming in at $118, you can get the card for about $111, but I will say there is a jump up to $119 after that. And we talk about Ariel as the ultimate collectible chase for Ursula's Return. This is where we start to get into, and actually probably one or two of the next three sets where we kind of have this theme where we have a couple of enchanteds that are sort of jockeying for position of like, what is the chase card within this set, right? Like, is it Ariel, or is it maybe, for example, something like a Diablo Devoted Herald or something like that? So just for context, when we talk about like which card is going to be the ultimate chase card from that set, going in and looking at Ariel versus Diablo, just to set the stage here a little bit. Of course, first we see Ariel coming in once again at 111, Diablo coming in at 93, and honestly, from a price perspective, as we kind of compare and contrast the two, both look very similar, slowly trickling down in price off of that rolling 3-month perspective. But here's what I want to have us kind of key in on when we talk about specific like trends and things that you can see almost like through sort of the smoke to really understand what card might have more potential of holding its weight long term. What I want to do is I want to take both of these cards, okay? We're going to compare them again. But this time, we're going to compare the unenchanted versions of them. We're going to compare the super rare Ariel Sonic Warrior with the legendary Diablo Devoted Herald. What you'll notice here is that the price is completely inverse. Now, I do understand on one hand, Ariel is a super rare and Diablo is a legendary. However, you have an absolute night and day comparison when you talk about 42 cents near mint for the super rare versus almost $17 for the legendary rare. And of course, for those game players out there, those who are familiar with Lorcana, you will obviously know what's driving this. The Diablo Devoted Herald is an extremely playable card pre-rotation, and in future Infinity will also be an extremely playable card as well, whereas Ariel has kind of fallen out of meta relevance. However, when you do think about that meta thread, when we do get into post-rotation and seeing how these cards are affected by post-rotation, it's very fair to think that this price tag of Diablo, this $93, has much more of a chance of going way down versus the Ariel Sonic Warrior, which honestly right now I don't know that much meta relevancy is holding this card up, at least broadly. Again, I would just say that like as I watch content from phenomenal creators out there who are talking from a gameplay perspective, like once again, you hear Diablo in all sorts of different Emerald builds. You don't hear much of Ariel. Doesn't mean it's not playable. You can play with any card, right? You can build so many different decks. You could build a hero deck, pirate deck, dog deck. Like there's so many different fun things that you can build within the hobby, and you can have a great time with it. But just talking about like from a competitive meta standpoint, right now Diablo is just flat out more competitive than Ariel. So looking at Ariel for our perspective, the collector perspective, this is probably the card that will hold its weight a little bit more. But if Diablo is your ultimate chase, we will give some like respect to that, because it is kind of, honestly, for the longest time, it was running with Ariel and even past Ariel as the most expensive card in Ursula's Return. With Diablo, I absolutely think that there is potential for a dip even further. It's already dipped from about 150-ish, like mid 100s, all the way now to under 100. We could still very well see like more of a dip going down all the way up until actually like post-rotation takes effect with Fabled. With Ariel, I think once again, similar, Into the Unknown, and also with Mufasa, where you're gonna have it where it's like, you know what, it's a Disney princess, it's the number one pullable, number one princess in the set, very collectible. I think where it's at is probably a pretty fair price. Might see some trickle down, but not nearly as much as the Diablo. So that's what we've got on the Ursula's Return side. And now going in, when we talk about Into the Inklands, we do have Ursula herself, Ursula Deceiver of All. The Enchanted Rare, going through here, looking at the data here, obviously going to see very similar callouts when we talk about this card, kind of looping in price a little bit, but down drastically when we talk about $155, very far off of that high retail price where this card was trading for in like the mid 200s a while back. Obviously, a lot has come out about Into the Inklands to shed a lot of light on things like lot of boxes and packs have been printed of Into the Inklands, pretty much printed into oblivion. Obviously, there's comments and understandings that this was, they're giving away packs like with Amazon purchases of Lorcana and things like that. So they printed a lot of it. There's no question about it. With Ursula, once again, I think it's going to fall into a similar perspective of the others where it's like this price does seem pretty fair. But what I do want to also call out with Into the Inklands, I do think Ursula is something that's like, look, the card probably stands to continue to trickle down in price a little bit further, maybe even more so than the Ariel, the Mufasa, the Into the Unknown. I actually do think that the Ursula has potential to go down further in price. So if you do want to be able to, to pick it up, you could wait on it if you want to. From a super long-term perspective, I will continue to pound the drum, and I understand that, like, I'm talking like way long-term. I understand that the set was printed into absolute oblivion, and so this is not going to happen even within the next year or two. I'm thinking more like 5 to 10 years down the road, because I do see myself from a collector's perspective being here 5 to 10 years from now. I do think when you start to get to those like anniversary type dates, like the 5th and the 10th anniversary, etc., they might print more of the card, and you might see them adjust the Storyborn, Floodborn. It is a door that will never be closed. It will always be cracked. So if you do want to be able to lock in that asset, you absolutely have that, that potential, pop that you could get off of the card. But of course, in the short term, I wouldn't be worrying about that too much. The one thing that I do want to call out, similar to Ursula's return, when we talk about Ariel and Diablo, when we look at the prices here for Into the Inklands, we do see that Ursula, for a while, has been also jockeying with another card, which is going to be Along Came Zeus. I will call out that I do think that when rotation does come into effect, this is a card that I see actually being affected pretty heavily by rotation. It's already kind of started to trickle down a little bit in price, but I will say this is a card that has fantastic tack with Steel. Steel's a very popular card, and it is still something that can be used in Emerald Steel decks, Amber Steel decks, etc. But at the same time, from a competitive standpoint, when rotation comes out and this gets phased out, I absolutely think there's a world where this card could see under $100. Obviously, this is one of my favorite artworks. It is the card that I have been trying to pull forever with Into the Inklands, and I'm still going to try and do it. But a perfect example of should you buy or should you chase, kind of going back to the original premise of the episode. For me, this falls perfectly into the category of, you know what, I'm going to rip some packs of Inklands. They're cheap. It's a fun chase, it's a fun little chase. It's a fun set to rip. There's beautiful enchanteds, and you know what? Hopefully I can pull one and make a memory. I really do think that in the next few months here, we will see potential for me to say, wow, I'm glad I didn't buy that when it was 180, 140, 120, now we're at 100, right? I think that there's potential for that. If it stays, so be it, right? I mean, that's fine. But again, I don't see many tailwinds coming for this card from the standpoint of wow, how did this card go from 140 to 240? That's crazy. I don't really see it for this card. I really only see headwinds for it, but at the same time, absolutely beautiful card. And it'll be in the collection one day. I have no doubt. I'm going to keep pushing for it, and hopefully it happens. But I will say, for Into the Inklands, I know we've called this out before, but it might have been in different episodes. I know we've opened Inklands recently on one of our opening videos, and if you want to go see Inklands get ripped, go check those videos out. But I will call out from an Into the Inklands perspective, that box retails for around $60 right now. You can find boxes out there for $60. Here are all of the cards, and honestly, I'm gonna reset this here. I'll go right here. I'll say these are all of the cards that almost certainly pull you your money back. And actually, sorry, one more time. Let's even go down to there we go. I would say that all of these cards pull you your money back, and even the Scrooge, even the Mickey Mouse Trumpeter, even they might pull you your money back as well. So it is a very good set if you are looking to rip, if you are looking to chase. Azure at Sea, Into the Inklands, those are definitely good ones where you can do that. Azure at Sea, I would say, is a buy, and I would say Into the Inklands is a chase in the purest form of today's episode, right? Azure at Sea, the packs are still going for more expensive than Into the Inklands because there are playable cards there, but the enchanteds are all so far down in price. Epitome of a buy. Into the Inklands, the packs are dirt cheap, and there's there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 enchanteds that are more expensive than You Came Back, which is the ultimate chase card from Azure at Sea. So once again, great set if you want to chase and have some fun and wait for maybe some of these cards to come down in price. You can certainly do that as well. So that's kind of my take with Into the Inklands. Popping in real quick to Rise of the Floodborn, no question here, and no surprise, the number one card that you can pull. Cinderella Ballroom Sensation, and looking at the data for Cinderella, she's been going down drastically in price over the past 6 months. Not overly surprising when you do think about the idea that as we start to get into Rise of the Floodborn and into the first chapter, we do start to kind of come up on a headwind here that, once again, it's not a tangible headwind, but it is something that's out there from a collector's perspective, and that is that you do now have access with Rise of the Floodborn and with Cinderella Ballroom Sensation to be able to pull this artwork out of a box and out of a pack that is drastically cheaper than the English counterpart. And of course, it's going to be your Chinese and Japanese packs, right? Again, understandable that it's not in English, but it is still the same artwork. It's still an enchanted rare, and you can pull it, and you can pull it on a budget, right? And that does take out certain parts and certain people within the market. So I would say with Cinderella Ballroom Sensation, there's probably still more room for this card to go down. However, I do also see Rise of the Floodborn being that next set up from first chapter. They just announced, right, the EQL, starting to give the boxes away. This will be your last chance for first chapter, etc. Rise of the Floodborn is certainly a set that should be next up. Quite frankly, all the Infinity sets should be next up, right? Into the Inklands, overprinted, Ursula's Return, kind of, sort of, just it's kind of sitting on an island there between an overprinted set with Into the Inklands as well as going into Shimmering Skies, which still is in rotation, post-rotation in Fabled. So I do think we will also see potential tailwinds for the card to start rising back up in price when they start to talk about, Rise of the Floodborn from an English perspective starting to get phased out. So I would say with this card, it is a good time for it. I mean, it is definitely one that, certainly one that if you want to go and pick up the English version, it's been dipping in price for the last year, 6 months to a year. If you want to go pick this card up, definitely makes sense to do it right now. Cause again, I do see that there, potential tailwinds for the card, as they start to have Rise of the Floodborn go out of print. So, that's what I would say for Cinderella. And then finally, just kind of last wrapping up, obviously we have to talk about Elsa Spirit of Winter. The ultimate chase card in retail for Lorcana, and probably not one that will change anytime soon, although there are some theories that we will talk about momentarily. But one final time here, looking from a data perspective, card has risen in price and looking like about mid-800s for your average market price. So with Elsa, this one's very simple. And obviously there's been content that's been done by phenomenal creators, both from a gameplay perspective, collectible perspective. Truly with this card, it's very much a collectible perspective. I mean, obviously still a playable, card within like the legendary, which it still goes for a few bucks, but really this is probably a collectible card at its heart, and really the heart of Lorcana collecting as it stands right now. With the Elsa Spirit of Winter, it's a bet on the hobby, and a bet that you believe that the hobby will be around long term. Honestly, until there are serious headwinds from a hobby, from a Lorcana perspective, which fingers crossed that never happens, this card is going to continue to rise in price. Perfect example of it is, obviously you talk about, in the last year, we've experienced, headwinds from a perspective of, kind of between that like sort of January and now time frame, like the last 4 to 6 months, right? Like it's been kind of quiet, and then there's been headwinds from a perspective of like them announcing certain things and sort of the state of the competitive game moving forward, and like all of these different things. And, you say to yourself like, man, like those are some serious headwinds. Like, I wonder if that's affecting the card. Well, in the last 4 to 6 months, this card has done nothing but go up. So if that's not going to do anything to hurt the card, I mean, honestly, the last 4 to 6 months for the state of Lorcana has been very concerning, to say the least. Card has done nothing but go up in price. People still believe in this card. People are still holding this card, buying this card, continues to go up in price. People are trying to lock in this card as a cornerstone of their collection, because if you do have the belief that Lorcana will be here 5-10 years from now, etc., you're going to want to get it sooner rather than later, because every week, every month, every year that goes by, more than likely you're going to see this card just gradually appreciate, really as it pertains to inflation and what $1 or what $100 is worth in the world as a whole, right? That is typically how these cards go when you think about Elsa, when you think about, Blue Eyes White Dragon from first edition LOB, and when you think about Charizard, base set Charizard, right? Like those, they really do just go as sort of the economy goes, right? So with Elsa, I would say it's kind of where we started with Into the Unknown. Very much bookending right now because, ironically, with Reign of Jafar in first chapter, they're both Elsa cards, but very much you're dealing with that Elsa thread that, as of right now, is the ultimate thread from a collectability perspective in Lorcana. And obviously, if you want to pick up the card, I would say no time like the present. But again, very expensive card, and totally understand if there's other areas that you want to be able to fill out in your collection. To each their own. We're all on our different collection journeys and hopefully having a lot of fun with it. But y'all, that's going to wrap it up for this week's edition of Collector's Market Watch. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel, go join the Discord, and until next time, we'll see y'all on the other side. Peace out.